Okay, game week 4 of the Premier League season is over and done with after the return from the September international break. So we're back in here. We're going to go through some of the matchups from the weekend. We'll start with the marquee matchup of the weekend. Manchester City 3, Manchester United 0. And I guess this was the result that was expected heading into the weekend. Neither of these teams have looked at their best to start the season, but it's not to the same level, obviously. And we're going to start with Manchester City, actually, just because I've spoken about Manchester United before. And, City coming into the season, I guess their hope was to double down on their offensive talent and refreshing the squad in that way, bringing in Ryan Cherky, Tijani Reindeers in the midfield, and Ryan Ait-Nouri at left back, who's more of an attacking left back. I guess their idea coming into the season was that they were always going to be vulnerable in transition. It's not something they can change from season to season, considering their personnel and what was available to them in the market. And so, as a result, their creativity and their ability to score goals was what was going to head up their title charge. And, in this match, the one thing I came away with, and as a result of sounding a little bit like a hater, they still look vulnerable to me. And like I said, that was to be expected, and they respond by bringing in Gigi Donnarumma from PSG, and he immediately steps into the starting lineup, obviously at keeper, and he had a really good save from on a Brian Mbuemo chance. It was a volley that he parried away, and that's what he was brought in to do. But getting into that first goal that Manchester City scored, Doku, who played on the left as a winger, found himself in the inside right channel. I can't remember the circumstances why, but he rinses Luke Shaw to get to the byline, puts in a cross that gets blocked. He recovers and puts the ball back into the danger area, and Phil Foden heads it home. And I think it's clear to me that if Manchester City are going to challenge for the title this season, it has to be through the resurgence of Phil Foden, I would imagine. Especially because some Ryan Cherky, who was one of their marquee signings, he's out long term. And so that center attacking midfield is up for grabs. And that's clearly where Phil Foden, I think, feels most comfortable as a player. He can do a job on either wing, but that's not where he's at his best. And so as a result, we saw actually Bernardo Silva play on the right wing for Manchester City in this game. And he does a really good job, obviously, of retaining possession, picking out a key pass here or there, pressing as well, all of those things. But he's obviously not a goal scorer. I remember there was a breakaway chance for him where he's in transition. Haaland picks up the ball and is driving towards the goal. He lays it off to Bernardo Silva, who I think very clearly should have shot, and he just wasn't comfortable doing so, and he plays a reverse ball back to Haaland, who mistouches the ball, and it falls to the keeper. But, that's his role in this team, is to retain possession, as I said, so he's not a goal scorer. But, back to Phil Foden, he was their driving force a couple years ago to a title, winning Premier League Player of the Season, and so that's, I think, what's going to have to happen in order for them to, as I said, challenge for the title, because they're still really vulnerable in transition. Even against a team like Manchester United, who aren't so great, obviously, there were still a couple moments where you saw that they could be gotten, and that was proven to be, of course, a couple weeks ago against Brighton as well. And I think one of them, they might have lost another match before that, if I remember correctly. But yeah, in this one, one of their key their key aspects in their midfield in order to maintain control and dominate games was Rodri just being the best midfielder in the world, and he's clearly not back to that point yet. And so as a result, they're going to have to rely more on Nico Gonzalez, because there's no way possible that Rodri can play the amount of matches with the amount of intensity and amount of quality required of him in the way that he did before his injury. And we saw that he looked really tired coming off after, I think, 70 or 75 minutes for Nico Gonzalez once the game was over. And so it's probably going to take him a few months to get back to where he needs to be. And hopefully by then for them, Ryan Aït-Nouri is over his injury issues. Oscar Bob is completely in full fitness and can contribute effectively. Savinho's back in the fold, obviously, after a failed transfer. And Ryan Cherky, maybe at that point, is healthy as well. And so I think this is what it's going to be heading into the Champions League for them as well. It'll be a stop and start sort of season for them. Hopefully they're not too out of touch by then for their sake from the top of the table. And maybe they can go on a run like they've shown that they are capable of doing over the past few seasons. I'm just not sure. As somebody who predicted the league, I'm not sure that's going to be enough, unfortunately for them. Transitioning over to Manchester United, and I mean, what can I say that I haven't said before that you all haven't seen from them or seen somebody else speak about? They just don't have the midfield to play the way that they want to play. And, missing Cunha and Mount in this matchup just kind of makes them look even worse. I think with Cunha, they probably get a goal, in all honesty. And, it's not just the gaps in midfield, if we're being honest. They don't have, they've been playing Ahmad at right wing back. Today it was Mazraoui, who doesn't look very comfortable in that role. And, Bruno, with Cunha out, I would have thought that Bruno would have been given an opportunity to play in one of those 10 roles, but instead it's Ahmad on the left, at the left hand, where he's largely ineffective, I think. I think in this system, he's specifically a right-sided 10, or I guess a wing-back if he has to be. But on the left there, he just wasn't very, very competitive, I would say. And then, Luke Shaw, who I think looked decent the first few matches of the season as a left center-back, I think today just wasn't one of his. It just shows that the level of drop-off that he's had from where he was at a few seasons ago. He's always struggled with injuries, but now he's just a lot slower. And it's not looking good for him. And then, Sesko, who I think is miles better than Rasmus Højlund, if I have to say. The problem is that he's not being helped at all in the system with the way that the team is playing individually. And, he may be thinking, I've made a mistake, but the way things are going, it's not like Ruben Amorim is going to be in a job for much longer, I would imagine. I know the club made a statement that they're backing Ruben Amorim, but there's no way that can be the case at this point. I think I've said this previously, I think October international break is probably the last straw for them so that they can prepare for the January transfer window and hopefully salvage their season. But, the longer they wait, the longer that they fall behind in the race for European football for next season, at which point their only route would be obviously to win one of the domestic cups, and they don't look like they're up for it. Getting into I think the second goal that they had given up, the first goal, that Phil Foden goal, Bruno just doesn't. He's not a 6. He doesn't track his midfield opposition in Phil Foden. He's not aware enough to play that position, and the goal is given away. In the second half, they did make a tactical adjustment in that Lenny Yoro was, I guess, asked to be more aggressive coming off his line to help in the midfield when not in possession, but it's clear that's not something that he's he's not comfortable doing. Not because he can't. It's just because the team isn't well drilled enough from what I see to be in order to consistently make that work. We see teams that play this three at the back system. It goes either one or two ways. Either you need to be super compact and break when you have possession, and the way that Brentford did against Chelsea, or you need to have your center backs be more willing to be aggressive and more cohesive in covering for that aggressive center back. If you're going to have your center backs push into midfield defensively in order to help your central center back, obviously your wing back, and everybody needs to be aware and needs to be drilled in how to cover the spaces for them. And then as a result, it just looks super duper sloppy. And I don't know where they go from here. They have Chelsea next week. The way Chelsea have played, I've watched every Chelsea match being a Chelsea supporter. The only way I see Manchester United getting a result in that match is if Chelsea have a letdown, to be honest, even at Old Trafford. So we'll see moving forward from them. But I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point because it's not like we've seen any adaptation, and it's not looking like we will see any adaptation from this manager. So it's going downhill for them, and I struggle to see Ruben making it past the October international break. Moving forward, we're going to go to the match actually that happened right before the Manchester derby, and it was Liverpool 1, Burnley 0. Burnley, for large parts of the game, defended really well. I didn't catch the first half. I only caught the second half, but they defended really well, even after going a man down. Ugochukwu getting his second yellow, 2 yellow cards leading to a red. I think he was a little unlucky, but, what can you expect with those types of fouls in those positions? So, anyway, Liverpool haven't looked good in really any of their matches to begin the season, but who cares, because they've gotten 3 points in each one of those games. So who am I to say that? But they've secured all 3 points, and that penalty that they were given at the end, it was just really unlucky on Hannibal Medri's part. That handball off Frimpong's cross, and I don't know what to say about that. It was just unlucky. It is what it is. But from Liverpool's perspective, with the way they've looked, I guess Alexander Isak is just going to be the one to raise their level, which is weird to say because, even before that transfer was secured, it seemed like they were going to be world beaters offensively in attack. And so seeing that they struggled to create chances in this game, I guess it happens. It can happen in any match versus any team. But hopefully bringing in Isak will just give them so many different options that'll take them to the next level. And to this point, they're the only team that has won every match among the title contenders in the league, of course. And so it's looking like Manchester City won't be at that level, aren't at that level now, and may not be at that level by the time. And by the time they do, it might be out of sight for them. And so I think at this point, moving forward, we're going to look at Arsenal. It seems like that's probably their stiffest competition, if I had to say, because Chelsea, a deserved draw against Brentford from either side. I thought Brentford did a really good job. And Chelsea, with a lot of rotation, that first half, they just didn't play very well. They eventually take the lead, obviously. You can go watch my video on that match, the match review on that. But that's my fear with Chelsea's their consistency to consistently put together results or even gain the result. I think last season, this is the type of match they probably lose. And so I guess it's progress that they came back and they took the lead, but ultimately they didn't end up with the result that they needed. So as for Arsenal, they look best poised to be the ones to challenge Liverpool, unfortunately for me as a Chelsea supporter. But while they look good against Forest, they still don't have Bukayo Saka, obviously. Although Nani Madueke, who naturally is a right winger, as everybody has said, looked really good in this match. Martin Odegaard, we'll see if he can stay healthy. He wasn't, I think, last season maybe. And obviously missed the majority of the Liverpool match as well with an injury. And then, Mosquera has looked really good covering for Saliba, but obviously he's not the proven commodity that Saliba is, and that partnership between Saliba and Gabriel is obviously the best center back duo, I would say, in the league. So we'll see if offensively they can create enough to push on the other side for Forest. I mean, first match under Ange Postecoglou. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, it's a really tough first match against a title challenging, team. And so I guess the only note that I have is I wonder if he's going to change the way he plays tactically. I didn't really catch much of this match, but if he's going to try to play the way that he did with Spurs, I think it's going to go even worse for him, because the level of talent obviously isn't to the same level that Spurs had. Spurs didn't have like world-class players all over the pitch by any means, but it was still a level above what Forest have generally. I know, obviously, Forest finished in European places last season, and Spurs were closer to the relegation places, but it doesn't matter if you just objectively look at the level of talent that both squads have. There's no way Ange can last if he doesn't change tactically. So we'll see against a more competitive team for them. We'll see how that goes for them. Moving forward, the only real other notes that I have from this weekend is that West Ham still look dire. We'll see. Tottenham, good win for them. And then I didn't watch the Crystal Palace and Sunderland match at all, but the note that I have is that they're undefeated in their last 10 league game matches, which is very impressive. And yeah, good for them, I guess. Woltemade for Newcastle, their striker, he bagged against Wolves. Wolves again looked terrible. Newcastle, while didn't look the brightest, I mean, they got the job done. I think that... Oh, the other match that I wanted to speak on is Aston Villa and Everton. Everton is a good draw for them. You can't expect them to be world beaters every match. They just don't have that level. But Aston Villa, it's looking really worrying. Hopefully they're saving all their goals for Europe, I guess. Because they still the only team... I saw this. They're the only team in the top 5 leagues that have yet to score a goal, which is an incredible stat. And, a team like that, this isn't... At the end of the day, the level of quality of players you have is going to determine where you finish. And when you start the season this slow, your ability to recover to what extent is dependent on the quality of team that you have. I spoke earlier in this video how Manchester City in the past few seasons, I've mentioned that, they've started slow and then they've gained momentum to ultimately finish in the league, and how they might not have that quality this season. Well, Aston Villa, being a team who missed out on Champions League, not looking like they can't create a goal to save their life, to what level can they recover if they consistently put on these matches? 4 matches, no goals. I guess a draw is okay, but in the circumstances of which they've started the league, it's not good at all. And then they have midweek European games against very solid competition. So, I guess, and we'll see if they're able to reinforce in any way in January. I'm not sure that they will be able to, considering their PSR situation. and having to sell Jacob Ramsey to Newcastle, but it's not really looking that good for them to start the season. I was expecting them to be able to be in that group with Manchester United, Spurs, challenging for that Europa League, and maybe sneaking into that last Champions League place. But to this point, it's looking like the only route to European football next season, if they continue in this way, is going to be a domestic cup or winning the Europa League, which by no means is a given, obviously. It's not like they were playing if they were playing in the Conference League, it would be a different story. But, there are some good teams in the Europa League, so that's never going to be a guarantee. We'll see how they bounce back moving forward and heading into their European games. But to this point, it's not looking good. Anyway, that's what I have for you guys today. I think I'll probably have a match preview specifically for the Chelsea-Bayern match coming out in the next day or so. So if you have come across this video, I appreciate you watching. I'll see y'all later.